Why do Latter-day Saints wear garments?
How do evangelicals feel about Catholics?
Hot take, Kurt. Okay. How do Mormons feel about under the banner of heaven?
Why do Protestants not believe in saints? I'm right here, Jeff. I'm
a
Latter-day Saint.
Hello, Saints. My name is Jeff. I'm a pastor in Utah, exploring everything I can about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm joined in this video by my good Latter-day Saint friend, Kurt Francom.
What up? Here I am back.
So the reason why we're set up this way is because we're going to try something that I've never done on Hello Saints, and that is we're going to do an autocomplete conversation.
Oh boy, that's where you finish all my
sandwiches.
Oh, you got it.
So this is where we take a page out of Wired's book, which is a YouTube channel where they have celebrities sit down, which, you know,
sitting down. Yes.
Yeah, and we look at what Google autocomplete is telling us. People are searching, and rather than waiting for Google to give the results, we're going to give the results.
Yeah.
Specifically about the main questions people are asking about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is going to be asked by me, answered by Kurt, and then any questions that people might have about Protestant Christianity, Evangelical Christianity. He's going to search it on Google. Whatever autocomplete says, I'll give the answer, and we'll just we'll flow with it.
Yeah, until we stump each other.
That's the point. So being that this channel is a pastor exploring the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it would make sense for me to go first, for me to ask the first question. So we're going to go over to Google here, and I'm going to just type in the question, why do Latter-day Saints, the first one is, why do Latter-day Saints do genealogy?
So the reason we do is we have such a deep belief in the afterlife, in eternal ordinances, and the work we do in temples, as you have explored many times, that we want to seek out the names of our deceased, our ancestors, and make sure that they have opportunity to partake of the beautiful ordinances and covenants that we have in our faith. Is that a...
Yeah, that's a good answer. And where do you carry out those ordinances on behalf of those whom you research in family history? Where do you do those?
Well, as we learned in our Saratoga Springs temple tour, Jeff, we do it in the temples. Right. So baptisms, endowments, those types of things. So
yeah, we
always, obviously the first time we go in, it's for our own name. But then every time after that, we're taking a specific name that somebody has researched and found, and having all the dates and the details so that when we go, we can represent that person, and we speak their name often as we're participating in ordinances on their behalf. So it's great.
So Latter-day Saints do family history to basically track down names of ancestors who weren't members of the church, but by you going through those ordinances, gives them the opportunity in the next life to participate in that plan of salvation and this celestial opportunity.
Right. Either weren't members of the church, or like my grandfather, for example, got baptized. I think he received the priesthood as a 12-year-old deacon, but didn't participate in any other ordinances. So when he passed away, a year after, my father and our family took his name through the temple for all the additional ordinances that happened. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Good answer. Your turn.
Here we go. Why do evangelicals support Israel?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So no heavy lifting in this video. I thought this was going to be like a light video.
That was the first one. Tell us, Jeff. So there are a lot of reasons why specifically American evangelicals tend to support Israel. And it is very complicated. It is very complex. It is tied to last days teachings, or teaching about the last days. And there's a specific school of what we would say eschatological thought, which is basically the theological study of last things, and it's called dispensationalism. Dispensationalism is the belief that God has made covenants with mankind through his people all throughout time, going back to Adam and Noah, and then specifically through Abraham, Moses, David, and beyond, to establish Israel as his covenant people. So when Jesus then comes and he brings a new covenant that is open to all, there's a school of thought in the evangelical community that God still will be fulfilling all of his promises to Israel in the last days, based on certain prophecies that you'll see in Daniel, Jeremiah, Isaiah, even some prophecies that you'll see in Revelation. So a lot of evangelicals believe that by supporting Israel, we're supporting God's original chosen people, the OGs as they were. And the sooner God fulfills those prophecies, the sooner we are getting to the last days. Now, I should say there's a large segment of mainstream Christianity that doesn't subscribe to that belief. It's called replacement theology, that actually says that the church, anybody who's born again by the Spirit of God, has replaced Israel. So all of the covenants and promises that God made with Israel will now be fulfilled through the church. So Israel is somewhat of a non-factor now. There's debates in mainstream Christianity about that, but being that a lot of evangelicals in America are dispensational, that's why so many of them support Israel.
Love it. And we would say a lot of that is, especially that first part, us too.
Yeah.
That God's chosen people, but we have a lot of theology around the gathering of Israel, right? So
right, because you believe that you're sort of participating
it's sort of a hybrid of there. It's like, not that we're a new chosen people, but we want to be part of the chosen people.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, next question. Why do Latter-day Saints ride bikes?
Well, why do we ride bikes? Well, I would guess that maybe somebody's typing that in because they see a lot of Latter-day Saint missionaries who are riding bikes. Now, I served my mission in Sacramento, California. However, I was a Spanish missionary, so we covered a lot more area. So I drove a car my entire mission, and I did have a bike, and I think we were encouraged to ride it every once in a while. But I think just the fact that it's cheaper to buy a bunch of bikes than buy a bunch of cars, and usually a missionary can get around just on bikes. At least in the United States, I don't think they're riding bikes in third world countries or things like that. I'm sure.
Although you never know.
Yeah, never know.
It's a quick way to get around, especially if it's hot outside. It's a little easier than walking.
So that's why we ride bikes. deep theological belief in bikes.
Just went to eschatological theology to why do you guys ride bikes?
Well, there you have it.
Sorry, I'll throw you some fastballs in a second.
All right. Why do evangelicals focus on the Old Testament? Which is kind of, that wouldn't be the first thing came to mind for me, but is that a thing?
I love that question.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if people are asking that because as Christians, putting such a focus on Jesus Christ and the New Testament, what's the point maybe in focusing on the Old Testament? I'm reading between the Google lines a little bit. We focus on the Old Testament because we believe that every word that is uttered in the Old Testament is an arrow pointing to Jesus. And we believe that from Genesis all the way through Malachi. That whether you're talking about the narrative books, the wisdom and poetry books, the prophetic books, everything is sort of the summation of that is a proto-revelation of who Christ is. So we believe that there's a lot of application that we see in Adam and Eve and the curse and what took place there as the need for Jesus when it comes to Abraham and the blood covenant that he made that points to the cross. When we look at Moses delivering the captives out of Israel, that is a type of Jesus delivering the captives out of sin and death. So we believe so much of the Old Testament, not to mention just all the prophecies that are very directly talking about the coming Messiah, are supplementary information that helps us understand the character and the will of God that we see fulfilled in Jesus. So we love studying the Old Testament, even though we might preach out of the New Testament a little bit more. We do spend a lot of time in the Old Testament.
Love it.
Okay. I wish some of these went a little bit deeper, but I'll try to find some
here
Google, and there.
Why
do Latter-day Saints wear garments?
Oh. Why do we wear garments?
I wondered that a few years ago until I was told.
Let me answer your question by asking a question.
Okay.
I noticed you're wearing a wedding band there.
I am.
Why do you wear a wedding band?
It's a good question. Because I can't get it off. My knuckles have swollen since I got married. No.
That's exactly why I wear garments. I can't get them off.
I mean, no, I wear my wedding band because it is a daily reminder of the unbroken promise and covenant that my wife and I have committed to, our holy matrimony. Mm-hmm. And every time we look at it, it just reminds us of those promises.
And we would say ditto, except not with our wife, with God, the covenants we've made with God, stepping into right relationship with God. It's a symbol it's a token, if you will, of how we can remember that relationship and stay actively engaged in that. So we're big on symbols in our faith, right? So the garment is a huge symbol that we have a long tradition in.
And this could be a rabbit trail, but has there been a little bit of an evolution around the thoughts surrounding what the garments accomplish? Because I had been told by individuals that long ago there was a little bit more of almost like a mystic perspective of what the garments accomplished, that wasn't just a symbolic representation, but there was more going on there.
Yeah, I think anytime humans are involved, folklore sort of inserts itself in some traditions, especially when they're mystical religious traditions. And so I remember back when I was in junior high, President Hinckley was interviewed by, I think it was 60 Minutes, and they interviewed the Marriott guy, and he gave this sort of elaborate story of him being in a boating accident, and he was burned up until the point where his garments started. So because there is a promise of protection, but by far most Latter-day Saints would interpret that as a spiritual protection, or just like you wearing your wedding band, there's a level of protection of you being in a relationship, right? That it kind of keeps you in a covenant context, so that you're not, if you have desire or temptation to step out of that covenant, here it is, or people can see it, hey, I'm in covenant.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, that's definitely, and you can find stories and books and about maybe more of this fantastic kind of story that's, which, I mean, people get hurt and die and harmed in garments, unfortunately, all the time, but definitely more of a symbol than a literal mystical power. So,
but it is the aim and the aspiration to wear them as often as possible. Is that right?
Yeah, and we're not too rigid about that. It's very common to be on a cruise ship, and people are walking around most of the day in their bathing suit, and or
You're not wearing your
at the beach, right? But definitely, as I'm vacationing, if I go home now, I'm going to bed. I'll make sure I put the garment back on to go to bed, and so anytime. But we're not fanatic about it,
Sure.
So
yeah, all right, that's helpful. Your turn.
This has one of your big fancy pastor words in it.
Okay.
Why do Protestants reject the deuterocanonical books?
Oh, deuterocanonical books?
10 times fast, go.
The deuterocanonical books they're extra biblical Hebrew writings that are not considered part of the Old Testament. Some people will call them the Apocrypha.
I was going to say.
Yeah. Although I think there might be other books that would be considered deuterocanonical that are not part of the Apocrypha. Why don't we consider them part of the Bible? Why don't we consider them part of Scripture? Largely because Jews never really did. Now, they're okay to be taught from. They are respected spiritual writings by Jewish teachers, and in the intertestamental period is what we would say. So between Malachi and Matthew. So we're talking those 300 or 400 years when God sort of became silent before Christ came. There was a few hundred years where he was silent. That's where most of those books are written. But we follow the lead of most Hebrew traditions that say they're good, they're useful, but they are not inspired scriptures. Martin Luther probably had a lot to do with that, and contrary to popular belief or rumors that are out there, that the Apocrypha was at one point in the Bible and then taken out of the Bible, and then the Catholics and the Protestants were fighting over it. That's not really what happened. The apocryphal books were never in the Bible until the Reformation, and I believe it was the Council of Trent in the 1500s as a pushback on the Protestant Reformation, where the Catholic Church finally canonized the Apocrypha, because there were indications of teachings in the Apocrypha that they felt more supported the Catholic teaching on justification by works that they felt would help their cause, which is when they canonized them.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Okay, so since you switched it up, I'm going to switch it up. And I'm not trying to offend. However,
don't go there, Jeff.
Google has a long memory.
Don't go there.
In a day when you guys referred to yourselves not as Latter-day Saints.
What was it, Jeff?
It was Mormons.
Ow! Got me.
So let's just see that's probably what a lot of people in my camp might still search, because they don't all know. They haven't gotten the memo that the name has been updated. So let's just say, why do Mormons live in Utah?
Well, because I was born here, Jeff.
Okay.
Well, I mean, Mormons do live in Utah, just like they live in Boston and Ghana.
Why is there higher concentration of Latter-day Saints in the Intermountain West?
Of course. Well, obviously, we have a great tradition of pioneering, and we were chased out of various. I mean, you've done video upon video on this with opposition and various from Nauvoo to Kirtland, and finally looked prudent to say, why don't we just leave the United States for a time, with Brigham Young taking us to which Utah was territory at the time.
In 1846-ish?
Yep, 1847 they came to Utah, and Brigham Young put his cane in the ground, and here I will build a temple to my God. And then from there, that was the center, and Salt Lake City grew, and I mean, Brigham Young had a phenomenal, I mean, he was a founder of many cities, from, I believe, Las Vegas to St. George to whatever.
Into California?
Into California.
Yeah, Idaho.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Basically, we live here because nobody's chased us out yet, Jeff, and don't you try.
Soon the transformation will be complete.
Oh, I got one.
Go for it.
Why do Protestants not believe in saints? I'm right here, Jeff. I'm
Well.
a Latter-day Saint. Don't you believe in me?
Step down, saints. We do believe in saints.
Oh, okay.
We just don't.
Do tell.
We don't venerate saints like the Catholic
Yeah,
Church
Catholics
does.
are on a whole different level.
But believe it or not, the Catholics don't own the corner market on sainthood.
Really?
Neither do the Latter-day Saints.
Ah, come on.
We believe, if you even read 1 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul is talking to this group of born-again believers who are misbehaving, and still refers to them as saints. So we believe that anybody that's been born again by the Spirit of God is transformed in their identity. They're a new creation. And they are no longer identified as orphans. We are no longer identified as sinners. We are adopted children of God, and we are saints. So we do believe in saints.
So you're closer to Latter-day Saints with this than maybe Catholics are? Because we would say members of the church are saints. So you're saying individuals who've accepted Jesus Christ are saints?
We would say that, yeah.
Oh, nice.
I don't know when it comes to your everyday parishioner, if they would, maybe they do consider themselves saints, but the venerated saints are on a higher level. I don't know. But I think that question is probably coming from the fact, like, why don't we pray to St. Thomas type of stuff? And that's because we don't believe it's the precedent set by Scripture to venerate certain individuals, or to let alone to pray to them as we see the Catholics doing.
Okay, here's a fun one.
Okay?
That I don't think you've covered in any videos. What do evangelicals believe about the rapture?
Oh my. I've been left behind.
Wouldn't that be awkward?
That would be awkward. I had it wrong this whole time. Okay, I'm going to do my best to represent the overall teaching on the rapture as it's currently taught in Protestant evangelical America. Okay? And I do have to be careful, because there's a spectrum here on how people understand this belief. And I think I might be on a less popular part of that spectrum. We'll see if I'll get into that. Let's just verbally process this here. So the rapture is the belief that, and it comes out of First Thessalonians. I believe it's either First or Second Thessalonians. I think it's First. And it's the belief that Jesus will be returning at the second coming. But when he does, that there will be a rapture, or a taking up or a catching up of the saints, or anybody who's a follower of Jesus that's still living, to then be with him in the heavenlies for a period of time not exceeding 7 years. And the reason why I say not exceeding 7 years is because there's this belief that's called a pre-tribulation rapture, mid-tribulation rapture, post-tribulation rapture. And it's this thought that there is going to be a 7-year tribulation where the world's going to get super bad before Jesus officially comes and rules the earth during the millennial reign. And there's a question on, will people be raptured
before that 7 years, in the middle of the 7 years, or after. So people will dissect passages in Daniel and Revelation to try to figure out the timing and the math of all that. But it is a popular teaching, specifically in America, that there will be a rapture of the elect prior to the official second coming that will play a little bit with the tribulation. That was made super popular in the late 90s and early 2000s by, I believe it's Jerry Jenkins, our buddy Dallas Jenkins' father, wrote a book with a guy named Tim LaHaye called Left Behind. And they made it into a movie with Kurt Cameron. I think there was a reboot with Nicolas Cage. Ooh. And it's the whole idea that when the rapture takes place, if there are Christian pilots that are raptured and planes are going to crash, if, there's an unsaved spouse, they're going to come home and just see their spouse's clothes lying on the ground because they've been raptured up. It's a very 20th century teaching that I'm not saying doesn't predate the 20th century, but was definitely popularized in the 20th century. There are a lot of historic Protestant churches like Lutherans and a few others that don't really fall into that belief of a rapture. I would say that someone like N.T. Wright, who's a popular Christian teacher, who is of the Anglican tradition, they don't really hold to a rapture belief either. In fact, there's very little understanding of what the rapture is because they believe when Jesus returns, he returns, and that's it. There might be some belief about a millennial reign. Some believe that there is one. Some believe that we're kind of in the middle of it right now. But that is the teaching around the rapture. And there's a lot to that. And people will get passionate about it. So we'll leave that there.
But what does Pastor Jeff believe?
Well, being that I have editing power in this video, I'll tell you, and I might edit it out. What I believe, and this is going to be a very political answer, is I don't think there is as strong enough indication of the teaching of a rapture as a lot of American evangelicals insist that there is. I believe that there are 4 things that we know for sure will happen in the last days. Jesus will return. There will be a resurrection. There will be a judgment, and there will be the new heavens and the new earth. Those are 4 things that we can't deny the scriptures clearly teach. Anything surrounding a tribulation, the rapture, and even I would say the millennial reign is, in my opinion, more speculative than I think clearly taught in the scriptures. So when I teach eschatology to the church, I make sure those 4 things are embraced. All those other things we can agree to disagree.
Perfect. And I think we would say something similar. There are Latter-day Saints who believe in maybe a rapture type of dynamic, but it's not coming up in Sunday school or sort of like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. What do Latter-day Saints believe about Satan?
Well, this is where you get us.
I was going to say the Trinity, but we'll go with Satan first.
Satan. Yeah, so we definitely have a belief in Satan, and that's something I think we share as far as there is a force that despises God, despises us, despises God's plan, and wants to devour us, as the scriptures say, right? And so this is where I guess it gets a little bit... For Latter-day Saints, we often hear evangelicals have this issue of when we frame Satan as our brother, they're like, ooh, don't like that, right? But we have a deep belief in the premortal life, that there was a figure of Lucifer, and a plan was proposed, and Christ said, send me, and I'll give all glory to God. Lucifer says, send me, I'll make sure nobody gets lost, and I will take all the glory. A third of the hosts of heaven were cast out of heaven, and Satan ruled and reigned on this earth without a body, and that's one of the distinct characteristics that we emphasize, that Satan and his minions do not have bodies. We do, and he hates the fact that that's the case. And so I guess technically, we kind of get hung up of is Satan or Lucifer our brother? In the long timeline of history, God created all of us children, and Lucifer was one of them. He rebelled, and so, but we don't obsess about that as much as maybe evangelicals seem to focus on that. But
but that belief there being that all humans this kind of gets into angelology and demonology and all that, that angels and demons are actually humans without bodies.
Right. And this is one thing I've learned for you, that difference.
Yes.
Right? That evangelicals, correct me if I'm wrong, like angels and demons are sort of a different species of spirit.
Correct.
Right? Where we would say, no, we're all intelligences that God created, but those are ones that rejected God, rejected his plan, and are led by Lucifer, but have the same roots, that eternal roots that maybe we have.
Which would be offspring, literal offspring, spirit offspring of Heavenly Father.
Right.
Right.
But made decisions that's just like we can make decisions to rebel and reject God. So.
Which is where the whole brother thing comes in. I think evangelicals take a little bit more issue with Jesus and Lucifer being brothers than even us being brothers with Lucifer, because there's this mysterious relationship between, in our context, angels, demons, and humans. So to say that Satan is our brother, and we don't believe that, but that doesn't cause us to recoil. That would make us scratch our head. Usually what makes evangelicals recoil would be that he's a spirit brother of Jesus. But what you would say is, well, we all are, though. It's not just like they're the only two.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and often for us it seems like a sort of random trope that evangelicals come at us with, because it's not like we're sitting in primary class and being like, Jesus and Satan are brothers. Like we don't like emphasize that or teach that, but
it's almost a logical deduction.
Yeah, if you look back and look at the broader scope, like, okay, yeah, I mean they have the same roots of creation, but all right, here's a fun one.
Okay.
What do evangelicals believe about dinosaurs?
Oh my gosh.
Is this
I don't know.
Is this a tension point among evangelicals, or is
I mean,
like whatever?
Not really.
I guess it's like science and evolution can maybe muddy the waters there.
Yeah, I think we, for the most part, embrace the fact that there's fossil evidence of dinosaurs. There's some, I've heard rumors of individuals who will say, well, but they were just placed there by God. The fossils were placed there by God to make it look like the earth was older than it is, but he actually created it between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. But that at that point, you're really trying to force an understanding of the timing and the age of the earth into what you want it to say. But I think most Christians are okay accepting the fact that dinosaurs walked the earth prior to humanity. There might have been some overlap there. There's a passage in Job that might indicate that there was some coexistence with dinosaurs at one point. I've actually heard other super strange speculations that the Nephilim talked about in Genesis chapter 6 isn't necessarily even talking about a humanoid type of character, that they were the giants were the dinosaurs. When the dinosaurs roamed the earth, and then when the flood came, it killed the dinosaurs. It's just a lot of rumor. Nobody really has, I think, a consensus of belief, but I think most of us would agree, yes, dinosaurs existed. We'll leave it at that.
Well, and I guess it goes back to this term of it's not salvific, right? It doesn't really matter as far as my relationship with Jesus and all that. And so
it's what we would say.
Maybe fun to talk about.
Yeah, it's a non-essential.
Yeah.
And we can agree to disagree on that.
So this I'm curious, is it a pretty common belief, like as far as evolution is completely rejected as a Christian body, or?
For the most part, yeah. I would say the highest percentage of traditional Christians, what we would say Bible-believing Christians, would say that evolution is not compatible with the biblical teaching of the creation of man. There are obviously going to be some who leave room for that. I think where there's a little bit more of a contentious debate is the age of the earth. Genesis chapter 1. Did God create the earth in 6 24-hour days, or was that just symbolic epochs of longer phases of time that it's really difficult for any of us to really get our minds around, even put language on? Right. So there are some that passionately believe that the earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old, and there's others that passionately say it's clearly 14.5 billion plus years old. So,
do you know what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints position is on evolution?
School me.
They have no position.
Okay.
So there you have it.
I mean,
you go to the website, the church website, and let's look for evolution. They have no position.
Okay.
On it. So even though I think many members are sort of like maybe fall in line with Christians in general, but and many members of our church make the assumption that the church actually does have a position against evolution, but they have no position. So
okay.
There you go.
Fascinating. Let's go a little bit more cultural.
Okay.
hot take, Kurt. Okay. How do Mormons feel about Under the Banner of Heaven?
For those of you who may not know, Under the Banner of Heaven is a book written by a guy named Krakauer.
I only know the Hulu show.
Okay. So it was a book about a crime that happened where radical Latter-day Saints murdered somebody in their family, justifying it by this context of blood atonement, which Brigham Young taught to some degree.
Yes.
And so then it led to an investigation. It was in Utah, I believe. And so this book was written about it. Then Hulu made a movie on it, so it was all the rage. How do we feel about it? We don't like it at all.
Really?
The story, I mean, it obviously doesn't make us look good. One, it's a terrible representation of a very diverse, broader faith, to make us look like crazy
zealots
that are literally considering murdering people or have a belief that it's ever justified to murder people, which is absolutely false.
Yeah.
So it did not give us a good look, and it's just one of those. That's something I think we're in the midst of reconciling, is how, because Hulu from that and other properties has discovered that the Latter-day Saint themed or Mormonism themed content makes money, gets clicks, gets views, and so they continue to sort of recycle that, and it's very frustrating to us as Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, and I was just on another podcast talking about this, and it is, even as somebody who, I'm trying to learn about the church, I have to push past a lot of those exploitations of caricature representations of the Latter-day Saint culture to even understand what do you guys actually believe? Because there's a lot of my friends back in the Midwest that believe that all Latter-day Saint women are the secret lives of Mormon wives.
Right.
And it's really an absurd...
Or all Latter-day Saint women are this
keep sweet and pray.
And pray, right?
Yeah.
Where like the fundamentalist breakoffs that are just terrible, that have had so much abuse and things like that. Like that's not the real Latter-day Saint.
Yeah, which is all the more reason why you should directly ask a Latter-day Saint questions.
Not Google.
Not Google, right?
I mean, start there, I guess.
You can start there. But definitely not Hulu.
How do evangelicals feel about Catholics?
It's a good question. There's actually been a bit of an evolution even over the past 20 or 30 years. I think prior to that, there was a pretty firm wall of division that just says, we broke away from you. We feel that you've added too much to what the Bible teaches, and we're not on board with that. So we've, for a long time, just said we don't associate with you, nor do we really even believe that you are representative of what the Bible teaches about Christianity at large. Now, I think over the past 20 years or so, there's been a little bit of a softening there, because when it comes to a lot of core doctrinal beliefs about polytheism, the Trinity, the atonement, virgin birth, all that other stuff, we agree on a lot of things. When it gets into the doctrines around salvation, there's still going to be a division where we believe in justification by faith. Catholics lean into a justification by works. That's why the Protestant Reformation took place. So we definitely draw a line, but I think that there's a little bit more of a softening and amicable relationship there. I'm seeing less and less evangelicals say what I heard a lot when I was growing up: Catholics aren't Christians, they're definitely going to hell because they teach all this weird false stuff. I think that's lessening. But similar to the relationship between evangelicals and Latter-day Saints, there's still a divide. Okay? There's no blending that's going to be able to take place because there are some, for however you want to call it, deal breakers when it comes to us fully linking arms. But I think there's been a lot more bridge building between evangelicals and Catholics than evangelicals and Latter-day Saints, for sure.
Most Christians would say Catholicism is a denomination of Christianity at this point? Or
usually we use the term denomination for the various sects within Protestant Christianity. I mean, I guess technically they're a denomination, but I think we would say that there's the Catholic Church, and then there's the Protestant Church, and within the Protestant Church, all the denominations. Some people might use that term denomination, but I don't think that that's common. I think we let them stand as sort of their own entity.
Right. Similar to how they see our churches. We're not a denomination of Christianity.
Right.
So it's similar, closer to how they see Catholics.
You're your own thing.
Right. and we'll take it, Jeff.
I mean, you did say that our creeds were an abomination, so.
Hey, man, can we still be friends? All right.
All right, I think it's my turn. Okay. Well, I'm going to give you choose your own adventure here.
Okay.
How do Latter-day Saints baptize, or how do Latter-day Saints differ from broader Christianity?
Oh,
I mean, that's
let
kind
me
of
sum that one up real quick.
Yeah, that's kind of the point of this channel.
So obviously baptism, then this maybe I kind of link the two questions of we are highly focused on ordinances and religious rites, right? R-I-T-E, right? Where we have a deep tradition of ordinances where not only do we want you to turn your life over to Christ, but let's have a ceremony where that is clearly stated, where covenants are made. And so, I've been to your children's baptisms. The main difference I saw there is in our faith, there's a much more focus on detail of, did immersion happen? Are they dressed in white? Is it done in where two witnesses, official witnesses, are there to witness that this happened?
It's a formalized process.
Right. There's an individual with priesthood keys who is authorizing that this ordinance can happen, right? And so I think just more, I don't know if ridge is the right word, but more ceremonial and how we do these things, because for example, communion or sacrament, that's something we do every Sunday, in a traditional gathering of church, where that's the focus, that's what we're doing. Where in an evangelical gathering or church, you may do it, you may not, but it's not necessarily the focal point, and you have different reasons for that. But for us, we're deeply focused on those because it's a way for us to commit to God, be a symbol of our commitment to Him, and stay in relationship with Him.
Yeah. So. Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Good.
Love it. Why do pastors speak in tongues?
We don't. Some of us do.
Wait, I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, right. So there are different segments of Protestant Christianity that might have certain distinctive beliefs, and that's why there's so many denominations. Now I say this ad nauseum in my videos, but it's worth repeating because so many Latter-day Saints say there's 40,000 denominations and you all think each other are wrong. That's not true. We are multifaceted, and there's a broad spectrum of these different denominations. The reason why we are distinct is because there might be differences in beliefs on certain secondary doctrinal teachings, church governance practices, or even worship styles. But generally speaking, when it comes to essential, non-negotiable biblical doctrine, I would say over 99% of the denominations are linked, and we believe that together we are the church. There is a segment of Protestant Christianity that would be called Pentecostalism. It is a secondary, not an essential, not a core foundational belief, but a secondary belief that the gifts of the Holy Spirit that were manifest in Acts chapter 2 and beyond are still accessible to us today. And there's the belief that should you pray and tarry and wait, that you can receive what they would call the initial physical evidence of speaking in tongues. And there's a range of beliefs as to what those tongues are. Some people would say it's a prayer language or a heavenly language, also known as glossolalia. And then there are others that would say, well, there's not really a heavenly language. In Acts chapter 2, they were speaking other earthly languages and proclaiming the greatness of God. So it's actually being able to speak other earthly languages. Either way, it is a belief that it is a supernatural gifting of the Holy Spirit that gives evidence to His power in our lives, and can be and should be practiced to exercise that power and that spiritual communion with God. So the clarifying thing there is that really only Pentecostal pastors pray in tongues, but that is a pretty small percentage of Protestant Christianity, so most pastors probably don't.
Like they would pray in tongues like every week in their service, or just when they would feel inspired?
Usually it would be in their personal prayer time.
Oh, okay.
They're speaking in tongues as they pray. So they'll pray in their natural language, but then they also might kick into a tongue type of language. It's a prayer language. Now, there might be cases where they would speak it in a worship gathering, but it varies because there's also different applications of it. Some people pray in tongues personally. There's others who believe that it should only be practiced in a corporate gathering where tongues is spoken, and then there must be an interpreter. Okay. The different Pentecostal churches practice that differently. So that's where tongues comes in.
So follow up to that, is it appropriate or too sacred to ask a fellow an evangelical if they've prayed in tongues?
You probably wouldn't unless you know they're from a Pentecostal or maybe a broader category beyond Pentecostalism would be charismatic, which is a lot more expressive. They believe in the activity of the gifts. They might not have a requirement, a non-negotiable requirement that you must speak in tongues, but they probably practice speaking in tongues. It wouldn't be too weird to say, oh, you're charismatic, or oh, you're Pentecostal, so you speak in tongues. They would probably gladly answer that question. You got to be careful, though, because there's a cultural dynamic that exists there that gets a little tricky. It's almost, it is synonymous with, so have you served on a mission? And it's like, no, I didn't serve on a mission.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So have you spoken in tongues? It's like to Pentecostal. Have you spoken in tongues? No, I've not spoken in tongues. Because there has been a cultural pressure to be like, well, why not?
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you?
Stigma there.
What are you doing wrong?
Yeah.
There's a stigma. So one of the reasons why I personally don't adhere to that belief of requiring tongues as evidence of the Spirit baptism, but there are some that do. All right, so Google did all the work for us. I mean, we could have just asked AI,
right,
and saved ourselves a lot of work, but who wants to feed the robots?
Right.
I know I don't. All right, so thanks for...
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah, that was good. You need to check out Kurt on the Leading Saints podcast, where he talks about all things leadership in the context of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Is there anything else people need to know about what you do?
No, I mean, if you know a good bishop in your life, maybe send them a link, and you can find us on YouTube, just wherever you're watching this video.
And if we didn't sufficiently answer some of these questions, drop a comment in the comment section, or if you yourself have a question that we didn't cover, drop that in the comment section as well. And Kurt might be in the comment section, but if not, I'm sure your fellow commenters can help clear up some of the questions. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to this video, support me on Patreon if you would like. Otherwise, keep coming back for more videos like this where we'll answer some more questions. So until next time, we'll see you later, Saints.
And don't get left behind.